Yes, those are 3 stories of people who've unlocked a secret. And that's the secret that I believe is going to be unlocked for all of us today if it hasn't been unlocked already. Now, when you came in, you got one of these. I hope you got one of these. And some of you probably stiff-armed this thing when you saw it. But we're going to get to that at the very end. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be honest and tell you, I'm going to ask you for something today, but it's not for the reason that you think. And what I ask for is going to have, for some of you, it's going to have application completely outside of Crossroads. And for others of you, the application is going to be right here. And in that secret, as we unlock it, you're going to find out how it's connected to the secret of unlocking purpose in your life. This is a cultural distinctive we get to talk about today. And that's what we're going to dive into. So let's pray and get started. God, thank you for the opportunity we have to be together. Thank you for the opportunity we have to experience more of your nature and your character, and actually, God, more of who you've created us to be. So I pray that as we talk today, that you would take us all on a journey of seeing and unlocking what it is that you want us to hear today. And I ask that that would happen according to the character and the nature of Jesus. Amen. So it has been said that there are 2 important days in every person's life. One is the day you are born, and the second is the day you discover why. You might have heard that before. That's about purpose. Purpose is such a powerful thing. And I just think if you are a normal person, you are in pursuit of purpose. Maybe you've had periods in your life where you've been on a quest to figure out, man, what is my purpose? Maybe things have changed in your life, and recently you find yourself in a situation stepping back and reevaluating and saying, am I on track with my purpose? I think all of us have had moments in our life where we've been in pursuit of purpose. Can I get an amen on that? People kind of identify with that? Purpose is something we all seek, something we all pursue. It's probably not an overstatement to say that when I was a teenager and in my 20s, I was obsessed with finding my purpose. I had an obsession with it. If you wanted to get me fired up, just start talking about how to unlock your purpose. I was trying to read everything I could get on the topic. I was trying to attend every seminar I could go to on the topic. I was trying to sit down with anybody who seemed to have wisdom to give me because I wanted to unlock my purpose. And I was thinking about this and recognizing like a lot of it for me was kind of mentorship through books. And so some of the books that I used to read and just dig into because I was convinced this is the way I'm going to find my purpose. One of them is a book called The Power of Positive Thinking by a guy named Norman Vincent Peale. Anybody remember that book? Yes, The Power of Positive Thinking. And I remember reading that book voraciously and just seeking the insight, the understanding. How is that going to help me find my purpose? Another book that I read, you might not want to share this one with your students if you have students in your life, but it's called Straight A's Never Made Anybody Rich, which is actually true, And Wes Roberts talks about, well, what is it that leads to success? And so I remember my brother gave me that book as a Christmas present, and I was like eating that book up. Straight A's Never Made Anybody Rich. Here's another one that was a key for me, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. How many people have read that book by Stephen Covey? Or gone to a workshop on that book? You feel like you've read the book. I mean, there's so much language in that book that's a part of our culture, right? You know, be proactive and win-win situations and sharpening the saw. I mean, these are all aspects of these books. These are all good books. These are all books that in some way help me understand more about purpose, but none of them really help me unlock purpose fully. And so there was like a desire in me for more. And I'll be very clear. I had a vision in mind of what purpose looked like when I achieved it. And that looked like being on the cover of Black Enterprise magazine. That's right. So you don't know, if you're not familiar with this magazine, Black Enterprise magazine is about Black enterprise. It's about Black business success. And I wanted to be on the cover of that because for me, purpose was connected to financial success. That's what I was pursuing as my purpose. And I want to just keep this up here because there's a reason also that I really wanted to be on the cover of this magazine. And it's because every cover of this magazine, those people are dressed tight. I wanted to just be able to wear it. Look at this guy on the left. I mean, look at those shoes, man. Those shoes are blinding with the shine that he has on them. I love it. And the guy on the right, his belt matches his plaid shirt that matches the red hue in his shoes. That brother is tight, man. I just wanted to be dressed like that, right? He even has patches on his blazer. I mean, I just thought that would look really cool. So for me, this whole idea of pursuing purpose was really wrapped up in financial success. And I will be honest and tell you, when I moved to Cincinnati at the age of 25, it was in pursuit of that. It was in pursuit of fortune. It was in pursuit of what I thought was purpose, which was financial success. came here for promotion with the company you might have heard of, Procter & Gamble, and knew that that was going to be an opportunity for me to go even beyond that position to more levels of influence, power, and more financial success. And so that's what I was kind of pursuing when I came to this place called Crossroads. And I will just say, for me, this pesky place called Crossroads began to mess with my definition of purpose. And maybe to say it even more honestly, this pesky guy named Jesus used what I was learning in this pesky place called Crossroads to change my view of success. Because if I was honest, man, I was actively pursuing success. I was that straight A student. I was going for it, and yet I was dissatisfied. I was dissatisfied, and I didn't really feel like I was discovering purpose at all because the books didn't work. The conferences didn't work. And what I recognize is the problem is the rest of the world tells you that purpose is about you doing you. They tell you that it's about you discovering your best you. And purpose isn't about that at all. Actually, the secret to unlocking your purpose is surprising. The secret to unlocking your purpose is sacrifice. It's sacrifice. And I learned that primarily through my experiences as a volunteer here at Crossroads. So when I first came to Crossroads, actually I heard about Crossroads before I even got there because I'd heard about this church. My brother was on staff at a different church, and he was like, you got to listen to this tape. By the way, if you don't know what that is, it looks like this for all the millennials in the room. Yes, I was listening to a cassette tape, and the cassette tape was given to me by my brother, and he said, you got to listen to this. And I listened to this cassette tape, and it was about this group of people who were willing to sacrifice financially, time, energy, effort to start a church where their friends could connect and hear about Jesus. And they were willing to do that. And it was just mind-blowing to me because at that time, I was a follower of Jesus, but I was a frustrated follower of Jesus. And I was primarily frustrated. I was frustrated by many things. But one of the things I was frustrated by is it seemed like every church I was a part of, if you didn't already know the code, you weren't welcome. It was kind of an insider thing, and I just longed to be a part of a church. I remember hearing about this church saying, God, if you would ever see fit for me to be a part of a community that is about people who aren't already in the room, man, I want to be there. I want to be a part of that. Well, little did I know that God would literally answer that prayer and put me in the exact church that I heard about on that cassette tape because it was about Crossroads. It was about the people who started Crossroads in 1995. And so when I got here, I jumped in and I began to be involved around here, and I began to volunteer, and I began to experience what happens when you sacrifice for the sake of other people to connect with Jesus. And it began to change my life. One of the places that I volunteered was in our student ministry. And I'll tell you a couple stories about that. So, you know, this wasn't in the days of like a big, massive student section like we have across the back there, and you know, we didn't have a game room and all that stuff. When I was a young man, when I was serving on student ministry, we met in a small classroom at Clark Montessori, and we had all our middle schoolers and all our high schoolers in that same room. Low tech, can I tell you? It was low tech. And so I remember that was one of the places where I started to build friendships around here. I went to the orientation, and I was there with a guy named Matt. And Matt was a young guy around my age, and I was like, man, seemed like a cool guy. I'm new to town. So at the end of the orientation, I'm like, man, I'd love to just grab some coffee, get to know you more. Like, you know, I'm new to the city, trying to build some friendships. Man, you cool with that? And he was like, oh, absolutely. He said, let me give you my number. I said, okay, well, give me your phone number. He said, oh, it's easy to remember. It's 241 Matt. He had actually arranged for his cell phone number to be 241 Matt. I don't know if that's corny or brilliant. I don't know which one it is, but I just thought, and you know, we're young and single at the time, and I started thinking about that, saying like, man, that'd be cool. You know, like when I'm like, if I'm trying to meet a female, it'd be cool to be like, it's 241 Chuck, but it's too many letters, so I don't know how to make that work. So anyway, but I remember Matt being a part of that experience, and so me and Matt and other people began to volunteer and invest in students. And my volunteer leader at the time was a woman named Molly Cunningham. She's still around on our staff, has made a tremendous impact at Crossroads, leads all of our first impression hospitality across all of our locations now. She was my first volunteer leader. And I remember Molly's investment in me. I remember her investing to connect me with a guy who could help me grow spiritually, and just the encouragement that she gave me all the time and just how powerful that was for me. I was understanding more about who I was as I was being led by her. And I also remember some funny things about Molly. So one of the stories I remember about her is, again, low tech. We were doing this series, and the series was ending with like evidence of the resurrection. Because, this was in the 90s. And so, like, in the 90s and early 2000s, it was all about, like, evidence for the things we believe. That was a big thing. So we were doing a series on that in student ministry. And I remember the week leading up to the series, because I would do some of the teaching, and then Molly would do some of the teaching, and others. And she asked for one of those, the 4-foot kiddie pools that you get? Like for the summer, those 4-foot hard plastic. Yeah, so she had one of those. And she filled it with water, and she had a big rock in her hand. And so she's going to town. I mean, she is bringing it. She's preaching the good news to these kids. And she's like, you know what? And we know Jesus rose from the dead. And how do we know that? We know that through a lot of these things. And she was giving all these evidences and facts. She said, but the greatest thing we know is you can look at the ripples. And when she said, look at the ripples, she used that big rock, and she slammed it into the kiddie pool. Look at the ripples! But when you have that small of a pool, there's not really a ripple. Just more like a, right? So I remember just cracking up, but it was low tech, but she was going for it. And I just think about those opportunities I had to be connected to sacrifice for other people, the sacrifice of my time to prepare those talks, the sacrifice of my time to be in the meetings where we were investing and creating an experience for students, and just how awesome that was for me, the friendships that came out of that, the life change that came out of that. One of the things I actually think about now, and this is going to make me feel old, but it's true. So Sophie, who led us in that song, when I was serving as a volunteer, she was in middle school. Yes, I'm that old. And she's over there, so you remember that, Sophie. She was in middle school, and I just think about that because every time she stands up here and I get to be led in worship by her, I think about the opportunity I had to just come alongside and be a part of that when she was younger. Man, I'm telling you, there's something I learned about purpose as I engaged. That's how I found my purpose. I found my purpose through sacrifice here. And that purpose through sacrifice led to me understanding that God had given me a gift around communicating. And it gave me an environment where I could grow spiritually, be able to manage and handle that gift, and to be able to do what I'm doing today. And it doesn't mean that if you volunteer around here, you're going to end up where I am. I know a lot of you are like, that's the last place I want to end up. Some of you would much more rather be on the cover of Black Enterprise magazine than be a pastor. I get it. I understand that. But I'm saying this. There's something that we uncover about our purpose when we recognize that our purpose is found in being about other people. Purpose is unlocked through sacrifice. That's my story. That's the story of many people around here, and it shouldn't be a surprise because it's the foundational principle that Jesus has established for the way that his movement would go forward. So I want to look at, just for a few minutes, a story of Jesus that probably is one of the most iconic stories we see of him in the scriptures. It's probably something that even if you've never read through the Bible in detail, you've heard about this story. The story shows up in John chapter 13. And in verse 3 it says, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Very iconic scene. Powerful because it's a complete flip of the way this was supposed to work in that day. I mean, you can imagine, we've got everything from bird scooters to Buicks to bikes to buses. We got all kinds of ways to get around. And in Jesus' time, they didn't have that. They just had their feet. So can you imagine? Like, I think about it like this. I don't know about you, but I have a pair of Keens, and I love wearing my Keens in the summer. But after about a week of summer in my Keens, my goodness, I would not want to wash my own feet. Right? I mean, we've all been there. And so you can imagine that's your primary mode of transportation. So whether you're walking through a field or whether you're walking through human waste, whatever it is you're walking through, you're doing it all in your feet. And so the dirtiest job, the job for the lowest person on the totem pole, it was clearly understood, oftentimes a slave, was to wash the feet of people when they would enter into a home. And so just imagine how those 12 followers of Jesus felt when he was the one who rose up from the table, took off his outer garment, wrapped a towel around his waist, got on his knees, and washed their feet. Powerful, iconic moment of sacrifice where Jesus is flipping the script. He's doing something that's not expected. And let me just give you more context around what was happening. This is the day before Jesus would die on the cross. So he's in the middle of the epic reason why he came. If he needed a moment of self-care that day, we would all understand that. If he didn't want that day to be the day that he was serving anybody, we could have given him grace for that. But on that day, Jesus chooses to wash feet. Not only that, But it says he did this knowing that he was going to be victorious. He did this knowing he was the most powerful man in the room, not just in the room, he was the most powerful man on the earth. And out of a position of power, he chose to sacrifice. And so when we see moments like this in the life of Jesus, it reminds me of The Color Purple. And a line of The Color Purple, the movie, they say, "Hush, Seeley, God is trying to tell you something." And I believe in this moment, in this story, Jesus is trying to tell us something about how our purpose is unlocked through sacrifice. Because he goes on to say this to his disciples. He says, "Do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should also do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things," listen to this, "blessed are you if you do them." I think it's a great question Jesus asked here. Do you know what I have done to you? Interesting that he doesn't say to the disciples, "Do you know what I have done for you?" Because washing feet is a service he's done for them, but that's not what he says. He says, "Do you know and understand what I have done to you?" Well, what has he done to them? Nothing short of blown up their faulty definition of what greatness is. And he's done the same thing to us through this example. Nothing short of blowing up our faulty expectations of where we find purpose and where our greatness is found. Jesus does something to us through this act. One commentator said this. They said, "This radically challenges our attitudes today, as it did those of the disciples. Service is not the pathway or preliminary to greatness, as we commonly assume. Rather, it is greatness." Why is the secret to unlocking purpose sacrifice? It's because of this. We live in a world, we live in a culture that creates us and trains us to be consumers. And if it doesn't train you to be a consumer, it trains you to be a brand builder, right? It trains you to make sure that you're building for yourself the right reputation, the right experiences. And I will tell you what, it is never an effective brand building strategy to see yourself as the lowest person on the totem pole. The world will never tell you that. And so the world wants us to take everything we receive and pour it into ourselves. The only problem is, when you do that, you will never, ever, ever be fulfilled. And so Jesus comes to not flip the script, but actually to correct the script, to write the script, and help us understand that if you want to unlock purpose, purpose is found in taking what God has given to you and pouring it out on behalf of another person. Because you're created in the image of a God, and that's what he does. God is generous, and God takes from who he is, and he offers it to you. And when you tap in to sacrifice, you will find a fulfillment that you won't find any other way. When you find how to pour out your life, you will find yourself operating according to the purpose for which you were made. And Jesus wants us to understand that. Stop and think about this. Jesus and his sacrifice and his movement of self-sacrificial people literally changed the world. It changed the world. I mean, we believe that at the time that Jesus left the earth, there were 120 people who were committed to following him. But those 120 people took the way of sacrifice, the way of foot washing, and over the next 300 years created a movement that over 50% of the Roman Empire would identify with. Over 50% of people who were part of the Roman Empire would identify as followers of this Jesus of Nazareth in 300 years from his departure from the earth, even though in many cases that meant persecution. How do you explain that? I mean, if you were placing a bet back then about who we'd be talking about 2,000 years, the Roman Empire in all of its might, or a carpenter turned teacher turned martyr from a small town in Nazareth, everybody's money would have been on the Roman Empire. And yet today, I love John Ortberg who says this, he says, and yet today, we still name our children Peter, Paul, Mary, and John, and we name our dogs Caesar and Nero. Because this sacrifice unlocked purpose. This sacrifice unlocked meaning. The people who elevated the value of women first were followers of Jesus. The first orphanages were started by followers of this Jesus. The first universities and public schools were started by these followers of Jesus who chose the way of sacrifice. In fact, every place where there's been the mark of followers of Jesus who have humbly followed in his path, you will find two distinct things. You will find sacrifice, and you will find more happiness than any other path. Because the secret to the life we were created to live is sacrifice. And this is why this is important for us. It's important for us because at a church like Crossroads, in any church that exists in this culture right now, the way to unlock purpose through sacrifice will always be countercultural. And so it's important for us to continually remind ourselves that this is what we are about, that we are about the extension of Jesus' mission here. That's what we're about. We have different words for it. We say this, that the mission of Crossroads is connecting seekers to a community of growing Christ followers who are changing the world. Connecting seekers to a community of growing Christ followers who are changing the world. Well, it turns out that the way of sacrifice is how we change the world. And let me tell you what that looks like specifically here in Oakley and in the Cincinnati-based Crossroads locations. It looks like this vision we have of flipping our city. Flipping our city. Now, what do I mean when I say that? We talk about this some. We should talk about it even more. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book some years ago called The Tipping Point. And in that book, it said that if 14 to 16% of a community, of a population, are going in a specific direction, have a certain behavior, have a certain approach or way of life, that it's just a matter of time before their impact will ripple through the entire community that they're connected to. And so when we talk about flipping our city, it's talking about taking Cincinnati from a city where there may be pockets of hopelessness, and in those pockets of hopelessness, flipping them to pockets of hope. It's talking about being a city that isn't divided by our differences, but through love and humble sacrifice, we're finding ways to be a city united. It's talking about not being a city where people live in isolation, but where people experience rich community. It's talking about being a city where things like forgiveness and love and the power that comes through sacrifice is transforming not just our lives in this building, but the people who never ever touched this building. That's what it looks like to transform a city. May it be said of us that 50 years from now, 20 years from now, 100 years from now, whenever it is, that when people think about this place, they think about Cincinnati and say, that's a city that's famous for its love. Famous for its love. What are we famous for today? We're famous for our chili, right? We're famous for our subpar sports teams. But what would it look like to be in a city where we're famous for our love? And may it be that when they trace back, why is that the case in Cincinnati? That they would look at not just Crossroads, but that they would look at followers of Jesus all through our city and say, man, there's just something different about them. There's something self-sacrificial about them. And they seem to be happy. They seem to be operating according to their purpose. This is what Jesus wants to unlock in you and what he wants to unlock in me. And then what that really means is sacrifice is a tangible act of love. We're called to be people who embody and enact love wherever we go. And the best definition for love I've ever heard is this, that love is ascribing worth to another person at cost to yourself. So do you understand what Jesus did to you when he washed feet? What he did to me when he washed feet? He actually freed us up to really unlock purpose. He freed us up to actually really understand the path to fulfillment. He frees us up to not be deceived, but to know that our purpose is unlocked in sacrifice. And man, I see this all the time around here, and it's one of the reasons I'm so honored to be a part of this community, because we have so many people around here who sacrifice for the sake of love, who are people who are pouring themselves out so that all of us can experience Jesus and experience his love. I wish I could highlight all of them. I really do. I cannot. But for this one, I want to highlight Dennis and Linda Baird. Dennis and Linda Baird. Now, if you are a person here who's 60 and plus, 60 or older, you know who they are because they just started an incredible group of people who are getting together called Senior Connect, and they are having an incredible impact already. We had I think it was over 350 people come to 2 interest sessions about Senior Connect here at Crossroads Oakley. How cool is that? How cool is that? Man. Because what that means is there's community and purpose and more love that's going to flow from that group. Dennis and Linda Baird lead that. They lead that around here. The thing that I love about them, though, is they represent multi-generational sacrifice. Their kids all volunteer around here. Their grandkids are all engaged in volunteering around here. They have set up a pattern in their family of sacrifice, and that pattern is producing fruit that all of us get to benefit from. So whether you've encountered them as they prayed for you, or whether you've encountered those two as they have helped create this experience, they're on the video team as well. Man, I am so thankful for people like Dennis and Linda because they embody what Jesus would have us all embody around sacrificial love. I see it all over the place. We have a picture here. A couple weeks ago, I had a chance to just go around and thank our volunteers, our incredible group of volunteers that do all kinds of things around here to help impact. And that's one of the reasons I'm wearing this name tag is because we asked all of our volunteers, anybody who volunteers around here, to wear their name tag today, even if they aren't serving. So around you, you've got people in name tags. I'm going to ask those people to stand up, and I want to just thank them. I want to thank every person who sacrifices around here so we can experience Jesus. Go ahead, stand up. All of you guys, stand up. I am so thankful for you and the way that you sacrifice for all of us to experience Jesus in the way that we do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys can be seated. You guys can be seated. So a couple weeks ago, I had an opportunity to volunteer in Kids Club. That's the other reason I'm wearing my Kids Club name tag. We had an APB come out that we didn't have enough volunteers for the 9:30 service a couple weekends ago, and it was one where I was doing announcements up front, and then I had time. And so I went into a second grade room, and I got to hang out with second graders for that 9:30 experience. And I will tell you, there's nothing like hanging out with a group of second graders to remind me that even though I'm the community pastor at this campus, not everybody thinks I'm interesting, and not everybody thinks I'm cool, right? I mean, you get in a room with some second graders, and you just automatically, it gets level real quick, right? But I had such a great time. I had such a great time. And the thing that I loved most was that I got to volunteer in a room with two volunteers who, you know what? Those kids do think they're cool. Those kids do think they're interesting. You know why? Because they're there week in and week out, serving and sacrificing and investing in the lives of our kids so our kids can hear about God. And man, I was just honored to be in that room and to not be the coolest person in the room. Because it reminded me of why this place is so special. And so I think one of the things that would be important for you to know is, man, we've got opportunities around here where we need people to step in and sacrifice. On average, every week for the last several weeks, we've had to tell 50 families we don't have a place for your child in Kids Club. And it isn't because we don't have the physical space, because we don't have enough volunteers who are stepping into those spaces and saying, man, I am happy to serve and sacrifice so every kid whose family comes in here can hear about Jesus. And so I want you to know that there's an opportunity for you to step in and sacrifice. That application could be right here because we have opportunities in need right here. But don't also miss the opportunity. Because it isn't just about the need today. It's about the opportunity. It's about the opportunity to unlock purpose. It's about the opportunity to unlock something that doesn't get unlocked if we don't step into places of sacrifice. And like I said, for some of you, the application is here. For others of you, and all of us have an application, maybe that application is outside. But make no mistake about it, every person here who volunteers is an extension of the love of Jesus Christ. From the parking volunteer who helped you park your car today, to the door greeter who said hello to you when you walked through the door, to the coffee team member who made the coffee you're enjoying right now, to the facilities team member who will clean up said coffee when you spill it. All of those people, to the usher who helped you find a seat, to the band who many weekends includes mostly volunteer people, to the video team who, while I'm doing this right now, can follow me around because they're so good, even though they're volunteers. Their work is being shown all around the world. The adult that's investing in your child right now in Kids Club, who's singing with them and helping them connect to the message and to the lesson that they're experiencing, the person who's hanging out with your middle schooler, if you come from middle school, or your high schooler during the week, to the prep team volunteer who made all of that possible because they showed up midweek so that the rooms are ready to connect with kids, to the prayer volunteer who prays with you if you choose to stay for prayer after a service, to the group leader or facilitator who's helping you grow in your relationship with Jesus, to the Go team leader and the Go group leader who, if you go to Nicaragua, is going to help you get the most out of that experience, to the reach out volunteers who are helping us do things like bless our city with thousands of meals at Thanksgiving time. Every one of those people is an expression of the love of Jesus Christ. All of them sacrificing, foot washing, so that more people can know Jesus. And I'm thankful to be a part of that team. I'm thankful to be with those folks. And so Jesus says this to all of us. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master. What does he mean? He says, hey, if this is true for me, then it's true for you. And no matter what you hear, despite what culture will tell you, the way to unlock your purpose is in sacrifice. And Jesus says, if you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. So here's a call to action. This is great in theory, but we have an opportunity every day in our lives to put this in action. Why? Because sacrifice is a foundational element of following Jesus, of getting to know Jesus. It's a part of the way that we experience the fullness of the life that he has for us. And sacrifice unlocks purpose. It's my story. It's many of the stories around here. And I believe today the call for you is to make it your story. So let me ask you the question, is there a place where people will be thankful for your sacrifice 10 years from now? Is there a place where you are pouring yourself out for others? And like I said, that application could be outside of Crossroads altogether. Maybe it's in your business. Maybe it's at your job. Maybe it's with your family. Maybe it's in your neighborhood. Maybe it's on the other side of the world. But is there a place? Can you point to a place and say, you know what, I'm pouring myself out. I may not be doing it perfectly. I may not be doing it all the time, but there is a place in my life where I am pouring myself out. And because of that, it's unlocking something in me. I want you to have that in your life. I think that's a place where you can grow and experience more of the fullness of life. And I also think you can get your reps in right here at your church. You can get your reps in right here in our community. I'll give you another number, 6%. Only 6% of the adults who attend a weekend at Oakley actually volunteer to make that weekend happen. 6%. And so, again, I just know there's an opportunity. Maybe you just need to be asked. Maybe you just need to be invited in. Maybe you just need to hear somebody say, hey, man, I think this is something God would have for you, and he will use this to grow you, stretch you, challenge you. So I want to do that for you. I want to invite you to be selfless. I want to invite you to be obedient to what Jesus said and say, hey, you're blessed if you do this. Because guess what? We don't have to do this, but we get to do this. We get to do this. So you got that card. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and take that card out. And as you do that, I'm going to invite our staff to come up. I've asked our staff to be here today, some of our Oakley staff, and they're going to be here just collecting these cards. I'm going to ask you wherever you are, you bring the cards up to the front as you fill them out. And let me just say, as you begin to look at that card, we also have volunteers coming with pens. If you need pens, we're going to raise up the lights a little bit. And I'll say this. I know there's at least three kinds of people, I should say, in this room as I share this today. There are some people in this room who've never volunteered around here. You've never volunteered. Now, maybe you're like, I just showed up today. Great, we're glad you're here. I get that. I get that. But you've never volunteered. Maybe it's because you're not sure you know exactly where to find your fit. Maybe it's because there's just been some reluctance there. And I just want to say, man, today is an opportunity for you to break that barrier and step in for the sake of sacrificing for others. I also know there are people in here who've stepped away from volunteering. Maybe there was a season where you were volunteering around here, and maybe for good reason you've stepped away. So let me just say very clearly, we got some faithful volunteers around here who are taking breaks. You should take a break. I'm all for that. So please don't hear me saying anything other than that. There are others of you, man, you've been on the sidelines for a while. Maybe it's time to step back in. Maybe it's time to say, God, where is it where you want to form me and shape me and actually use me to have an impact again? And then, like I said, there are people who are here for the first time. One of the things I loved about Crossroads is there wasn't this prerequisite that you had to believe all the right things before you could be a part of this team. Let me tell you something. You can belong here before you even believe this stuff. We have ways for you to jump in and engage, no matter where you are in the spiritual spectrum. And so as you fill out that card, you'll see it asks for your name, your email, your phone number. And then it says, I'm interested in serving with, and it says, please check one. And let me just walk you through what these are. So Kids Club, I've been talking about that a lot today because we do have need there, and there's great opportunity there. And let me say this, there are ways to volunteer in Kids Club that don't have anything to do with being in a room with kids. We have people who do things like set capacities for room, and they're kind of managing through a spreadsheet matrix as volunteers are checking in and kids are checking in. And it's like to watch them work, if you like high intensity, high pressure, quick action, you should do that. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can get involved. We need people in Kids Club who are really good at welcoming new families. Can you imagine coming to this big place and somebody pointing you in a direction saying, and drop your kids off there? Gosh, it'd be nice to have a human interaction that helps you understand the vision of what Kids Club is about. We need people who want to do that. You know who'd be great at that? Parents who have kids who are in Kids Club. Because we know and can communicate that to someone else. So there are plenty of opportunities in Kids Club. Student ministry, 6th to 12th grade. If you have a way of helping teenagers connect, man, that'd be a great opportunity for you. Let me tell you something. I have 3 kids. My oldest is 10. And one of the things that I do pray for is that when my kids become teenagers, I pray there is a godly person, maybe you in this room, that has the insight and can speak into my kid's life who's not me or their mom. Because I think that's going to be so important. Maybe that'll be you for my kid. You can be that right now for someone else's kid in student ministry. First impressions. You want to hold doors and greet people, make people feel welcomed in this place, help them find a seat. If you want to learn how to make the coffee that you enjoy, there are opportunities to do that in First Impressions. Love for you to be a part of our incredible facilities team. We have an incredible team of people who keep this place looking the way it's looking. And let me tell you something, they don't just clean up after you. Those are some of the best pastors we have in this place. They're some of the best people to connect with in this place. And maybe you'd say, man, I'd love to do that. You can join and be a part of that team. And then there's weekend production. Our incredible video team is mostly volunteers. In fact, I don't know if you guys know this or not, the person who's directing video for the service this weekend is a 16-year-old volunteer named Sarah King. All the stuff you see moving, all the things happening on time, she's not pressing the buttons, she's telling adults to press those buttons at 16. So there are a ton of ways for you to jump in and be a part of what God's doing here. And I want you to know, I believe this is something that God can use to unlock purpose in you. So here's what I'm asking you to do. If that feels like something that you're called to, if your call is to do that as a part of Crossroads and our team, then as we stand and sing in a moment, you can feel free to come up and drop the cards off at these buckets. And when you do, you're going to get a sticker that just says, we get to do this. Because I tell you what, it's a privilege that God even includes us in his work. And I hope that if you come up and get that sticker, it's a reminder that you get to do this. And I also hope it's a reminder when it's challenging as a volunteer, because it's not going to be always easy. But man, we get to be a part of what God's doing. We get to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. Now, if you pick Kids Club, I love Disney World. Anybody else love Disney World? I love all things Disney World. And one of the things I love about Disney World is something called the Fast Pass, which is for all the good rides, you can get a ticket that you can just go past all the other people in line and kind of move to the front of the line. I love that. I love that. So Kids Club has created a Fast Pass opportunity for you today. So if you do pick Kids Club, right after you drop your card off, you can go straight to Kids Club, and they're going to walk you through the orientation process so that we can get you volunteering and connected to your right spot sooner. So just keep that in mind and head on over there after the service. So I want us to stand. I want all of us to stand. We're going to sing a song right now. And again, like I said, maybe the application isn't this for you today. Where is the place where God is calling you to be a sacrificial servant moving his kingdom forward? Because friends, we get to do this. And it is an incredible privilege to be a part of this. We're going to sing a song while we do that. That's a great calibration for me because the song says, whatever pleases you will be our path. If this is good for me, I want it, Jesus. And I know that when we step into places of sacrifice, Jesus says, well done, my good and faithful servant. So as we sing this song, fill out that card, drop it off in the buckets, and then you're free to go. God, I just pray that as this moment happens for all of us in here, you would help us to make the specific application for our lives. Where is it that you're calling us to wash feet? And God, I pray that as we do that, you would unlock more of the purpose that you have for each and every person here. In Jesus' name, amen.